like to welcome our Director of the Law Center, Mr. Charles Swift, to come share with us how the center is working, what the work that we're doing, and share more insight as to how this center can continue to benefit the Muslim community. Please welcome Charles Swift.
Thank you. It is terrific to look out and see the tables filled and see all of you here tonight. I want to talk about, I've been talking to you now, and this is this is the fourth year that I've come up to this stage at this time of the year, and we made some promises that we were going to build a firm. And then we said, okay, we've got to get the firm built, and we're getting some cases. And I promised you something that, coming in as a football coach or something, that we were going to win. I didn't say when, but I did say we were going to win. Guess what? If you haven't been reading the press lately, we've been winning. The first win came beginning in March. The center represented Nor Salman, the wife of the shooter in Orlando, Florida. This was an incredibly important case. This is what makes MLFA different. It makes the center different. This was about guilt by association. No relative of a mass shooter had ever been tried. She was a Muslim woman. They ascribed to her things. They interrogated this woman for 14 hours and got a confession, except the confession was completely false, which we proved in court. They tried her a mile and a half from where 49 dead bodies were. We walked into a courtroom where the creative artwork of the protesters outside said, "Fry her till she has no pulse." And 3 weeks later, we walked out with a complete acquittal. At the end of the acquittal, we had demonstrated, here's what we had. Huffington Post and Breitbart both agreed that the FBI had lied. Both agreed that the FBI had lied and engaged in serious misconduct. The New York Times asked, how could the government do such a thing? After having profiled that it was a great idea to prosecute her in the beginning because gay rights. Okay? How could they take such a young woman on it? We demonstrated that the informant program that the FBI says makes us all safer. Guess what? What came out at trial, and only at trial because we forced it. Omar Mateen's father was an informant for the FBI who had been informing on his community since 2012. Didn't make anybody safer, did it? The FBI had received reports, but because his father was an informant, they didn't take it seriously. They tried to blame it all on his wife, and the jury didn't buy it. The heads of the Pulse nightclub, the owner said, "I know many things now that no one would have told me but the defense, and I know that woman didn't do it. Her confession was false, and we can start to heal." And then we also showed that Omar Mateen did not target Pulse because he was gay. He was they were random. And all those things that had been written by Donald Trump and others were wrong. It also, in 168 terrorism trials, it was the first walk-off acquittal ever. And it only happened because of you all. It only happened because of you. That's the only reason, because we existed before on the part. Now, the next one was, if we go all the way back to the start of Holy Land. How did Holy Land start? It started with the Boehm case. Does people in this area remember the Boehm case? Boehm was the young man who was killed in Israel by Hamas back in the 90s. The Boehm sued the Holy Land Foundation along with a lot of other Palestinian organizations. Ultimately, the organizations went broke. They were frozen. They were stolen. They couldn't get to their funds. They couldn't defend themselves. And at the end, they ended up being a suit for $167 million. The combination of that lawsuit in conjunction with the federal government almost wiped out Muslim charity in America. They took out all the majors. And it took until 2008, 9, and then really in 2012 for the Palestinian organizations to rebuild themselves. But they did. They rebuilt themselves and they became effective again. And they've started a movement with regard to Israel about boycott, divest. Yes. They became politically effective again. Campuses were a part on it. And all of a sudden, Boehm decided to file, those plaintiffs in part hired the largest law firm in Chicago, Locklord, filed a set of secret pleadings, were asked to publish it on part to make all the current Palestinian organizations liable for the $167 million so they could shut them down. And begin the end of the Palestinian organization and to try and push through, yet again, prosecution after that. They coordinated it all with the federal government. Except this time, we were there. And we were on it one day after they filed it. We found out about it from the people. We filed motions to put on it part, and what happened? After, at each stage, we're there, no, you don't have jurisdiction. No, you can't be in this suit. No, the parts on it. The judge dismissed the lawsuit. They continue to try and litigate, reopen. We've defended depositions. We've kept the lawsuit shut down, and I am absolutely confident. And they're getting frustrated now. They're getting angry, and they're not winning this time. And we're preserving all of the Palestinian organizations. And we could not have done that because, hey, it started with, the last time it started with the Palestinian organizations. So you may not be in that organizations, but we know what the steps go after that. So we were ready this time to stop them. And that was because Khalil didn't have to go look for a law firm. And the law firm didn't have to go through all of its board of directors and say, hey, can we do this? And get up to speed and know the client. We made the decision in 12 hours. And we were in court, answering it in 72. You got to be fast. You got to get on top of it immediately. You cannot wait. No legal problem gets better with age. And so we had the speed to do that. In immigration, we heard about a case way before anyone else did. A Syrian family. A young man who'd come over and when he came back into the United States after visiting his family in Turkey, part of his family members, was thrown into detention in Detroit, Michigan. I only refer to him by his first name because the other parts are under seal. We fought for him for a year and a half while he was in. We did his hearings, etc., and he had the courage to stay in detention and fight this. They were trying to, he'd gotten his green card, they were trying to strip him away and push him out of the country. Why? Because his father had been in the Muslim Brotherhood. He wasn't, but his father had been. He was anti the ISIS people, but his father had to get passports outside the country, and so it was an interesting thing on the passport. They took to strip it, and they called him a terrorist because of this. And he sat in jail, although he'd committed no crime, no part on it, for a year and a half. Or almost a year and 2 months. We won at the hearing. We went up to the board, they took it up to the Board of Immigration Appeals, which has become Trump Central. Okay? No place in the part. The Board of Immigration Appeals, whatever the government wants. So they overturn. They say, no, his associations with these members, even if there wasn't anything absolute on it, is sufficient to be bad moral character and kick him out. These were the same rationales used for the Palestinians and others in the 80s. We appealed up to the Sixth Circuit. You never win, but we'd made a record, and in front of the Sixth Circuit, what immigration judges now call and is cited, the most cited case on the part, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned his part, gave him back everything, and said on the part that the Board of Immigration Appeals had abused its discretion. That's huge in setting precedents for the coming hearings. To fight through on the fact that the facts matter. The last one, I don't know if I want to jinx it because we're on our way, but it's already getting cited, is fighting carp. We're in Washington, D.C., in the most watched, and now, after having it decided, 2 more cases are citing it, finding that the CARP case, the Controlled Application Review and Resolution Program, which prevents Muslims from moving forward for their green cards and for citizenship, we're challenging it under the Administrative Procedures Act with an extremely brave man, pushed through, and we now look forward to having our hearings and winning it in the next year. What I'm telling you for the first time is that we built a boutique law firm that does national security issues, that's taking on the government's arguments of guilt by association. I think we're unique. I think that, and what we're not trying to be. I'm not trying to replace CARE. I'm not trying to replace Muslim advocates. I'm not trying to be something else for the part. What I do and what we do at the center is we take the cases when somebody says the word terrorist. It's that simple. I've never represented a terrorist in my life. I've been in terrorism cases for the last 15 years. I don't represent terrorists, and MLFA doesn't represent terrorists, but we do walk into a place when that word is used. And it's used far too often, and it's used by guilt by association. We are taking on the no-fly list, the terrorist watch list, the TWIC cards, gun denials across the country, all based on a simple idea that you're associated with some organization, some relative, some person, something that might be a threat somewhere out on it. And we are building and continue to build, and I believe that we have the firm and the framework to do it. We figured out how to win. When you're building a ball team, the first thing you got to do is get some players. Then after you get your players, you got to learn how to win. This year we learned how to win. We ask you to continue to support us so that next year we win more. Because as Khalil said to me after that, he said, "This is great. This is fantastic. I want the Super Bowl." He's a Cowboys fan. He's never satisfied. He's on me every day. I want to win more. And I got to tell you, I do too. I absolutely do. I want to get in and continue to build this framework to win. Because I believe in winning, that in the end, we can't afford to lose in these cases, and we have extraordinarily important ones on the horizon. We'll be in trial next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And so we ask that you help us to do that, to help us build that part, because, as they say on the part, when you build a program, you want to establish first the program, then you want to establish a winning tradition, and then you want to just win and have that be the expectation. We've lost for too long. This year we had a winning season. Next year we have a winning season. We keep going with that. I'm not promising that we'll win everything. No coach ever does that. Nobody ever says it. Because, if we are, we're not taking the right cases. We're being scared. We're playing only the easy games. We'll play the toughest ones. But I'll also tell you this in the last part. There's a lot of victories that I didn't tell you about. Those are just the ones in court. The other ones are, let me give you an example of what's one of those and sit down. I flew out to Oregon, to Portland, Oregon. A Somali woman. She's retired. She gets, her sons are successful. So they give mom money. She lives simply. She cooks things for her community. She paid for her house. She didn't get a mortgage. She's a Muslim woman. Her husband died, and all she has to do is do for her community. And she thinks about every relative or any person who's ever helped her on the globe, and if anyone's in need, she sends them money. The sons go, "Mama, what did you do with the money?" She smiles, "God told me where to send it." Okay? But the government got interested because she gave away all her money. And she listened to religious broadcasts. And they investigated that woman and tried to find a terrorism tie. They investigated her for a year and a half. We investigated every single one of her transactions. We called the people. We figured it out. Kathy worked like heck putting together the list of where did this money go. And we would get this stuff. And then we went out for a session with the FBI. And at the end of the session, they apologized. They took her off the no-fly list, and they closed the investigation. There was no court case. We do that about every 3 weeks, in some form or another. Christie is starting to look, when are they going to keep him on the no-fly list? Because we're having success in getting people off. And that's the part on it. And it goes, one of our guys who was on the TWIC card, right before his hearing canceled, he gets his card. Transportation worker identity card. So, we've won cases more in this year. We're starting to go, we expect to win, we're playing to win. And we win them not just on the front page, we win them in quiet hearings in quiet places. And we represent organizations, leaders, all parts on it, because the idea is the sooner you get an attorney in these matters, the better. So, again, just one other story on the part and I go away. One of the leaders, that terrible thing that happened in New York. Terrible. Where they drove down the sidewalk. The ISIS supporter killed all of those people. Unfortunately for a young man who'd stayed with him and helped him, also just knew him, had no part, was also an Uber driver, but he's an imam in training. One of the leaders, his father was leading imam in his country. And his papers were at that guy's apartment. The FBI had him out as a person of interest and he was being flashed on the part. And you don't know his name. That's because right after it, we were called, we flew in, represented him, worked with the FBI, cleared him in 3 days. He stopped being part after the center had a good enough name that when we talked to the New York Times and gave them the story, they killed it. He disappeared. Think about that. All the embarrassment, all the pain of an imam involved in that. Gone. That's because we exist. And I ask for your help to continue to do that. Thank you.